The sex shop is called Propaganda.
Welcome back to Lock Horns Banger TV's weekly live metal debate show, live from the Banger Bar. If you're watching in the archive, reminder that we do go live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. In 2017, we want to surpass the 100K subscriber mark. Okay, well, we closed out 2016 asking all of you, what do you want to see on the show? And a lot of you said, well, why don't you do shows about specific legendary bands? Well, you know what? We listened, and here we are, and you've probably guessed it already, but this week we're digging into everything Sepultura. Of course, the band last week on Friday the 13th released their 14th full-length studio album called Machine Messiah, and so far it's been getting some good reviews. And to help me through this daunting and sometimes emotional task for many of us in the metal community is one of Canada's best rockers, bit of a metal nerd himself, and a big Sepultura fan. It's Danko Jones. Check him out right here.
I wanna now, I wanna know, I got to rock, I need to roll. If you can't hang with the speed I go, I'm gonna roll tonight. I wanna now, I wanna know, I got to rock, I need to roll. If you can't hang with the speed I go, I'm gonna roll tonight. Tonight, set this town alive.
Nicely done, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here, Sam. It's great.
It's been a while. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to be here. This is a lot of fun.
This is a lot of fun. Yeah, we pulled a lot of stuff out of the woodwork, out of the closets for this week's show. What have you been up to?
Making a record, and it's coming out March 3rd. It's called Wildcat. And so I'm in town just waiting for it to be released. And I guess before it gets released, we're going to talk about Sepultura.
We're definitely going to talk about Sepultura. So tell me, give me the story. How did you get into this band?
Well, I got into Sepultura like a lot of people from North America when they released Beneath the Remains on Roadrunner and released it to a North American audience. I got caught up in all the hype, and that's something that I think a lot of people who are into the band now either are too young to know or too old to remember.
Right.
The buzz on Sepultura in the music magazines pre-internet, music magazines, and on everybody's lips was this band from a place that wasn't ever known for metal before, which was Brazil. And I got caught up in the whole thing, and when I finally heard Beneath the Remains, I was like, this is the heaviest thing I've ever heard to that point.
I heard a little story about you seeing them on your 18th birthday. Is this true?
Yeah, I did.
Tell me. I'm jealous.
Yeah, I saw them on the Arise tour the eve of my birthday in Toronto. So as, you know, Max was yelling out, Toronto, destroy! I was like, man, I'm an adult now, you know? So I was able to tell that story to Andreas years later. And yeah, I told him that I kind of like became a man listening to Sepultura. So they do hold that certain place in my heart because of moments like that.
Right. It's like your heavy metal bar mitzvah or something.
Kind of, yeah.
Anyway, glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
This is going to be fun. All right, but as you know, it's not really about us. It's about all of you out there. Lock Horns is a debate show. We want to hear your opinions, tales, and arguments for everything Sepultura. And as usual, I want to give a shout out to everyone that is joining us from around the world, which is befitting considering we're talking about a band from Brazil. Here we go. We got people from Chester, Manchester, both in the UK, Lisbon, Portugal, Berlin, Germany, Miami, Florida, Laredo, Texas, San Francisco, California, Whitehall, Maryland, Barrie, up the road, Ontario, Cherokee, Iowa, Swansea, South Wales, Kuopio, Finland, Vaken. Hello, Vaken.
Whoa.
Germany, is it Thomas? Pinneberg, Germany. Horenburg, Germany. Riga, Latvia. Stockholm, Sweden. Bogota, Colombia. Sydney, Australia. Abbotsford, BC. And from Brazil itself, we've got people joining us from Sao Paulo, Belo Horizonte, Teresópolis, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and Patos de Minas, Brazil. My apologies for that Canadian pronunciation of your hometowns. But I don't speak Portuguese, so we do our best. As usual, also joining us in the studio is Lisa Ladiseur. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, Sam. Hello, Danko.
And
we got some loves for your shirt from the Swedes who know what Close Up is all about.
Close Up magazine. I've been writing for that magazine for 11 years. Sorry, I'm plugging my stuff. But,
do it, man.
I've been a writer there for 11 years, and
awesome.
Scandinavian metal magazine.
Fantastic. Great magazine. And we've also, the fourth person, if you will, is actually the Cowbell. Can we hear the cowbell, please, Lisa?
Guys, check it out!
Okay. And
nope, the school bell is toast. We threw it away with the Christmas
we got
garbage.
the cowbell. I think we're officially maybe announce a competition for naming the cowbell. I'm a firm believer that that it is a character in the show and it should have its own name. So there you go.
So I'm taking suggestions for the name for the cowbell.
Cosmo, wasn't that Ted Knight's cow that he drew on Too Close for Comfort? But whatever.
Whoa,
that's
deep.
Miles away from
Deep.
Sepultura.
Anyway,
big Ted Knight
speaking
fan.
of Sepultura, enough about cowbells. Trivia. Has there ever been a cowbell in a Sepultura song? Park it. A lot of songs to think about. I digress. Let's get started. Who is Sepultura? What's the speed history here? Formed in '84 in Belo Horizonte. Originally released as a demo, Bestial Devastation. I had it on demo. Then as an EP, Morbid Visions '86. Schizophrenia, Andreas Kisser joins the band. Big breakthrough, of course, Beneath the Remains, as Danko was mentioning, gets signed to Roadrunner, and in through Arise, KSAD, kind of like considered the golden era, if you will, of the Max Roadrunner years. And then, of course, the band's biggest album, some might call it their black album, Sepultura Roots, released in '96, shortly after which Max departs. We'll get into that later. They recruit Cleveland's Derek Green on vocals. They produce Against. Generally speaking, the sound shifts away from kind of a thrash, black death metal thing into a slightly more hardcore tinged, dare I say, groove-oriented sound. Pound the pavement with that sound for a while. Igor, of course, Max's brother, departs after Dante 21. Andreas Kisser really becomes kind of like the pillar, the centerpiece, the creative engine of the band right through the post-Max era, right up until, as I mentioned earlier, Machine Messiah released last week on Nuclear Blast. There you go.
That's over 30 years, 14 records. You did it.
For better or worse, I know a lot about this band. I don't know what I was spending my time doing, but I think before we go on, we're going to go to a clip, Lisa, yes?
Yeah, so in case that didn't summarize it enough for you, we dug out something from the Bagger Vault from Monty Connor.
Here we go.
You know, Sepultura was a band that was continually evolving. When they were signed here, they were actually a death metal band. They had just released a Schizophrenia record, which was still a death metal record. When they put out the Beneath the Remains record, their sound was starting to evolve more into like a thrash sound like Slayer. You know, in fact, Beneath the Remains was called, you know, I guess their version of Rain and Blood, or the closest thing to Rain and Blood at the time. But, you know, that Sepultura was a band whose sound was continuing to evolve with each record. No two records sounded alike. By the time they got into the Arise record, they had basically, you know, gotten away from being a death metal band and became a full-on thrash band. You know, the vocals got less death metal. Just, you know, they were still guttural, but not in an unintelligible death metal way. Max was singing less. So, you know, if you look at the difference in lyrics between Beneath the Remains and Arise, it's got like half the lines, you know, in each song. He's just like singing less, but with more force and more power. So, but they were continuing to evolve. And I would say that the Chaos AD record was pretty much right on the cusp of what was modern in metal at that point.
There you go, the almighty Monty Connor there, for those of you who don't know and have been living under a non-metal rock for several decades. Monty is the man that signed Sepultura to Roadrunner, among many other bands, including Obituary and then later Slipknot. So a bit of a metal legend, a shout out to Monty there. Okay, so here we go.
Okay.
Let's get things started.
Okay.
Your favorite Sepultura record?
My favorite Sepultura record is the record that I discovered them with. It's Beneath the Remains. I've spent the most amount of time with this. And that's what happens with records, you know, and this came out in, what, 89?
Correct.
89. So I had a dub copy of it. I dubbed it off a friend.
Of course.
And I threw the cassette out when I just went through an anti-cassette phase that remains today.
Dubbing is recording.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
One side of a 90-minute tape was Beneath the Remains, and so I just would listen to that, and that's why I choose that. But also, can I mention, because you have brought in a rocker to discuss a metal band, I can't say this without mentioning the first minute of Beneath the Remains is a tribute to Lita Ford. Close My Eyes Forever is a direct lift. The internet should go and do an A/B on that. It is a direct lift of Close My Eyes Forever. It's the first intro. I've never heard anyone say it. I've never read about it online or in a magazine, but go and listen to Close My Eyes Forever. It's the duet she did with Ozzy Osbourne on the album that was released a year before this record.
Tell me, have you ever confronted the Sepultura boys with this tidbit?
I would never dare. But I'm doing it now.
Consider it a dare. This is a show called Lock Horns, which really should be about debate. However, my favorite all-time Sepultura record is also Beneath the Remains. My story is a little bit different, I suppose. I had an all-metal radio show when I was far too young to be on air, and I actually, way back, played the very, very first Sepultura albums on the show. I had this on a dubbed demo. I got Morbid Visions, I think, on vinyl, and then Schizophrenia. I loved Schizophrenia, and for me, it was Beneath the Remains was sort of like the more refined, better sounding, harder hitting version of Schizophrenia. It was a combination of the melodicism and the guitars. The speed, of course, was fantastic, and I think it's a deep record. Listen to side 2 of Beneath the Remains. It's an album, and and there's beautiful records that follow from there, Rise and Chaos ID. But there was something kind of raw and pure about that record.
Absolutely.
Do I have to shut up now? Oh, I've been cowbelled.
I'm starting light on the cowbell. I don't know my own cowbell strength yet.
Okay,
so.
well, since we've got some unanimity in the studio, we're gonna go to a clip, yeah?
We are going to go to a clip from Scott.
Scott Burns,
Yeah.
who of course mixed, produced, one of the two, or both.
Both.
Beneath the Remains. Here we go.
I don't want to put words in their mouth, but everyone thought death metal was shit back then. The thrash was still very, thrash metal was still in vogue, and, death metal was still very much underground, and they were Brazilian in the demo, and no one wanted to do it. Roadrunner didn't have a lot of money. So to be honest I think Monty and Borovoy at the end said, well, Scott's down there and he's done this stuff and we don't have anybody else, so what else do we do? So I was like, hell yeah, I'll go. I've never been to Brazil. These guys are cool. Obituary guys turned me on to them, so that'd be awesome. So I remember Monty gave me like $500 cash or something like that to get me in, and I brought drum heads and a bunch of equipment. So Max met me at the airport, and you had to get through customs. Well, Brazil's a little bit corrupt. So we spent about 2 hours waiting for Max to try and pay down the lowest customs guy, and there went almost all of our money. So we had to call Monty and get a little bit, get more money. But I was there 3 weeks, but I think we spent a week doing rehearsals, and then we recorded for a couple weeks, and this was their big chance, and they were pretty, economically, they were kind of poor guys, you know what I mean, and this was their chance to try and make it on the, to get out of Brazil and things like that, and I mean, it was awesome. They were fired up, and they had great songs, and we had a little bit hard time with the language barrier. They had a couple of their buddies with them that would do some interpretation and things like that. But I mean, you know, it was awesome.
So there you go. One of the most important metal producers of all time. For those of you who don't know, Morris Sound Studios, of course, in Tampa. Scott Burns is credited with creating sort of a definitive sound, really the first distinctive sound, quite possibly, in extreme metal with bands like Sepultura and Obituary and many others. So there we go. We got some consensus on Beneath the Remains. So what I'm going to do is just ship that over there and put Beneath the Remains up at the top. So we're started. We're moving now, Lisa.
I know, I'm a little worried we're not going to have a show because there's no locking of horns. Everyone loves this album.
Okay, well, let's see what people have to say about Beneath the Remains. Here we go. Delicious Dishes. Beneath the Remains is Sepultura's best album. Best production, best song variety, and keeps a solid, very high level of quality with a lot of memorable songs. Slaves of Pain. Robin Hansen, Beneath the Remains is their best album without a doubt. When I first heard that album, I was blown away by it. Brutal album. And Freaky Nicky says BTR, we got a shorthand. It took thrash to new heights in terms of brutality. There were heavier thrash bands around at the time like Sadus, Swallowed in Black. But Sepultura brought it to the forefront of the metal scene. Jose Luis Faria, BTR, is one of the best thrash records of all time, made them the best metal band around. And lastly, Andrew Williams, the one I find myself listening to more often than not is Beneath. Therefore, I must like that one more than all of the others. Even though they might get more critical approval, you've got to go with your heart. Wow. Aww. I didn't think it was such consensus. I thought I was an outlier in liking Beneath the Remains. I thought more Arise, Chaos AD, Roots.
Yeah, I swear I thought it was going to be these two. One of these two.
For sure. But anyway, we do have people liking other Sepultura records, correct, Lisa?
Yes, there are a few more albums to be talked about.
There's 14, in fact. Okay, we got a shout out. We got some shout outs for Arise?
Arise seems to be right now at number 2.
Okay, so Arise, released in '91, is the follow-up. We've moved things around to Beneath the Remains. Slightly more polished version of Beneath the Remains. What are your thoughts on it?
In that clip you played of Monty Connor, he did make a mention that, you know, that is obvious that all the way up to Roots, every album was, I hate to use the word progression, but there was a change, arguably for the better.
Yeah.
And Arise, between Beneath and Arise, yeah, more polished, more industrial. They did start to bring in a little bit of the drums that eventually really defined them almost.
Yeah.
But it's still in tandem with sound and kind of the roughness of Beneath. There's compared to, if you're going to compare Arise to later albums, it has more in common with Beneath. It's still rough around the edges, and I love that.
Big change here, of course. There was Inner Self video, which was extremely gritty. I watched it a million times back in the day. We get to Arise, and they had Arise and Dead Embryonic Cells, and these were like
post-production,
proper music videos. Right?
And I loved Inner Self, the video.
Yeah, me too.
And it really, what the part of the buzz that I think a lot of people forget is the fact that Max, at the time, I saw him as like another James Hetfield in terms of a frontman. Sure. He had that charisma.
Yeah, absolutely.
That, you know, that was, you know, you can't overlook that.
Absolutely. Arise. We talk too much. Janusz Legutko. Arise. I mean, really? Okay, Beneath the Remains was great, but Arise is where they shined. Every band has that one album that defines their career. Yes, Roots was the album that put them over the top, and I really don't get the hype behind it to this day. It's where Sepultura died for me, but Arise is their reign in blood, in caps. Bold statement. Von Su, Arise is a Teutonic album. I like to listen to it besides South of Heaven.
I get that. I get that comparison.
Yeah. A little bit slower. A little bit slower. Superjoint, Inner Self is my favorite song, so I should go with Beneath the Remains, but Arise is faster. I don't know if I'd agree there. I think there's more consistently thrashy songs.
They work in tandem with each other, really.
Yeah. Anyway, we're in the weeds now. Joseph Senzik. Let's go. Arise, it's their best. Not a single poor second. Every beat, riff, and lyric was perfect. And Thrashman says, that Arise cover. It's a fucking cool cover. Love that cover. And are there more here, Lisa, below Thrash Man?
There are a lot more, but everyone agrees. There's no one that doesn't like this record.
Right.
And I think for the cover alone, it should be boosted up here.
Okay, we're gonna move. We're gonna make some moves here.
I also was debating between Arise and Beneath as my pick.
Yeah.
But I went with the one that introduced me to the band. So.
Yeah. I think your point there. Yeah, there are a lot of similarities between these two albums. I think it is really the production and the polish that really sets them apart. Okay, Lisa, where do we go from here?
Well, we definitely are going to talk at length about Roots,
Yes.
but I want to give at least a few moments of love to those earlier recordings. We have a few comments about the really raw days here.
Yeah. All right, Bullet Belts, we take the picture from far. Bestial Devastation, Thomas Prosco says, sadly, don't be apologetic. My favorite Morbid is... My favorite Morbid Visions Bestial Devastation always gets screwed over in these debates. I get it. For me, Darkest is best. It was raw, nasty, dark, and ripping Brazilian 80s death thrash, and a sound they sadly never came back to. I actually listened to Bestial Devastation this week for the first time in a while, and yeah, so primitive, so different. I mean, the jump that this band makes between here and here is like, it's almost a different band. But I agree that there's a vibe there that's pretty fucking cool, and you know, there's a lot of bands still creating that sound now intentionally, even though they can't afford better gear. Morbid Visions, 86, Underdog Entertainment. Lots of love for Morbid Visions, Bestial Devastation, because of their impact on the Norwegian black metal scene. Yeah, interesting feedback loop there, because they were really influenced by Venom and Bathory and early Sodom and Destruction, and then it kind of, and Celtic Frost, of course, and then it kind of comes back around. Schizophrenia, 87. Andreas is in the picture. Really different record. Really different sounding band here. Lots of solos and classical work. What do you like this record?
I do.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Andreas, and he's a figure that is, I think, gets overlooked a lot because of the brothers.
Yeah.
And with Derek and stuff. He's quietly been the anchor of this band, now we know, especially these days.
Yeah.
And this album definitely showed just how important he was to Sepultura.
Absolutely.
When he joined the band, a little bit, you could see a little bit of where it was going, but then on these records, you hear the melody that he infused and just through his guitar chops.
Totally. It's almost like these three are kind of, there's a progression here. There's sort of these two, then there's these three, then there's these 2, 3-ish, and then we'll get into the...
There's a definite progression from here to here.
Yeah, big time. And I will say, we say a lot about the Cavallera brothers, one of the finest metal brotherhood in the history of the music. I don't know, but Andreas's guitar leads and melodicism was a huge reason why this record is one of my Desert Island albums.
But yeah, going from here to here, you can really see how important Andreas was.
Sorry. Okay, where are we going? Schizophrenia. Harmless Rebels vinyl channel says that's long. Schizophrenia is super underrated, and if not for the bad production, which I love
it too.
The Psycho intro. It would have been a masterpiece. I think there's some truth to that.
It still stands up.
It's almost like Beneath the Remain. It's like this is the better produced version of that, and this is the better produced version of that. They're very similar in some ways. Greg Howard. No one listened to Sepultura when Schizophrenia released.
Yeah, I know. Neither did I. I didn't find out about it. Oh, okay.
Was released back in the day, although lots like to say they did. LOL. Greg Howard. I was there, and I'm still here. So
even if the shirt doesn't quite fit.
Yeah, 1990. I bought this in 1990. I was 16, and sadly I wasn't at the show. It was a European family vacation in London when I was 16, and didn't see the show, but had to have the shirt, and it's one of my cherished little ditties deep from the closet. So Lisa, Chaos AD?
Yeah, so this is my favorite Sepultura album. Not that anyone ever asks.
Lisa, what's your favorite Sepultura record?
KSAD.
All right. KSID, 1993. Okay, moving forward. Jose Luis Faria. KSID was a masterpiece of thrash and groove. I think that's important. We're getting groove element coming into the band sound here. Some of the nastiest riffs ever created. Adam Perry, KSAD, has got to be up there. That album took them to another level in their sound. But if it's not that one, you can't go past Arise. Just a classic. Luke Nash. KSAD was their perfect mix of thrash and tribal. They should have stopped then. James Purdy, KSAD, is the only proper choice for Sepultura's best album. Next in line is Arise. There's really no need for debate. And Couches11 says that KSAD would be my fave. It's got the quintessential Latin rhythms with less of what would become nu metal and groove. KSAD was still disturbing and raw. What are your thoughts on that record?
Well, you were on my podcast, and we discussed the era around these albums.
Yes.
And I said to you that around this time, I checked in with this. I had to play catch up with this record.
Right.
But I checked in with this, you know, as a cursory listen, but I was listening to other bands by this time.
Yeah.
I did play catch up, and I went back and I heard Roots and Chaos AD. So it doesn't have that, for me as a personally, it doesn't, I'm not so connected with it like I am with these albums, like these three albums. So, but I do appreciate it and I respect it in the discography, and I think it's a heavy monster. It definitely deserves all the praise it's getting.
Yeah.
The
sound was shifting here. I think that's
definitely
the key thing to mention. The sound was shifting. There were more mid-tempo paced songs. There were fewer solos. And I remember
more instrumentation,
and you started to get that kind of signature, for lack of a better phrase, sort of feedback-oriented riffs where you get those breaks, boom, boom. You never had that really prior to that, and this was the stepping stone to Roots. And personally, similarly, musically, I'm a bit of a speed freak. I like my guitar solos. And I started to like the band a little bit less with that record.
I'm with you. There's no locking horns.
Enough from us. What's next?
Well, if we're going to have any debate on this show, we better start talking about Roots.
Okay, gloves are off now. We're getting into the biggest record in Sepultura's history. Of course, this is 1996's Roots. Real big shift in the band's sound, pulling on a whole different type of imagery as well, and in terms of the production of the record, that has a whole story to it as well.
So, just a warning, inhale, big breath, because the comments on this are substantial. People have a lot to say about Roots.
We'll take a deep breath. Here we go. Roots. Michael Montoya is back. Roots was the most successful and had arguably the biggest cultural impact. If you like metal that grooves, it's original and outside the box. That's original and outside the box. Roots is it. Also, Roots continues to influence modern bands. Just listen to most deathcore, metalcore, and hardcore bands. Traces of that album are everywhere. Nick Ottaviano, also a regular viewer. As far as legacy, the sound pioneered on KSAD and fully realized on Roots is what the band is most predominantly known for. Absolutely, great point. Roots Bloody Roots alone being their staple song. These two records are also extremely influential musically and also help strengthen the band between Sepultura and Brazil. As much as people want to rail the band for going the nu metal route, they did it right, and the tribal grooves add a layer of depth most nu metal bands don't even come close to.
While you're taking a breath, and just to get some sense of debate,
please.
Delicious Dishes says fuck Roots. R. Paras 34 says it's beyond overrated. Azimuth Coordinator, they lost me at Roots. Michael Joseph, overrated as hell. But our own Craig Mailman says, I'm sorry I was 16, I like Roots.
Hey, entry point is usually what defines our path, so let's see what people have to say. Jesse Morgan, I'm no fan of nu metal, but Roots shows how awesome nu metal should have been. Nu metal was an abortion in the best way, but they forced it back into the womb and tried to make the abortion be reborn a normal, well-behaved boy. Extended metaphor here from Jesse. I'm working on it. Suddenly, the genre of freaks and inbred mutants like early Korn, Slipknot, and Soulfly became Limp Dick, Papa Roach, That roach was easy to kill. Wah wah. And Linkin Park and other forms of sorority rapist jock metal. Pause. Now it's an abortion in the worst way. Fuck MTV. Here we
Jesse
go.
Morgan has a very strong opinion.
Tell us what you really think, man.
Last one.
Moving on. Pardon the pronunciation. Masage? Nowak? Sorry, buddy. It better not be Roots. What a piece of garbage. My argument is that, like Jonathan, is that like Jonathan Davis even stated it, Roots was a Korn ripoff. Band capitalizing off of nu metal is pretty pathetic, and it just seems so disingenuous. Clearly, this was just trend hopping. What else sucks about Roots? In case we want to know, Max rapping, leading us to the oh so terrible catchphrase, jump the fuck up. Guitars got super simple. Zero solos as far as my memory goes. Why did they need two guitars anyways? Lyrics were awful. He's just getting fucking started here. Worse than the usual Sepultura. This might be the comment of the year. Vocals were band just yelling rather than the usual thrash cadence Max used to have, featuring Jonathan Davis crying speaks for itself. A fucking DJ. Pathetic. A metal band does not have a DJ. Not an instrument, nor is that computer thing the idiot from Slipknot dances next to. I'm fucking losing it here. In conclusion, Roots is a piece of shit album that I listened to when I was a teenager. Wow. Okay.
Can't argue with Jonathan Davis crying.
I'm crying.
Give your thoughts on. Let's take a sobering minute here,
Listen,
Danko.
I was listening to for you, the guy you just, and for the one before it, I was listening to Exile on Main Street when this was released. Okay,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I had to go back and find out about what one of my old favorite bands from when I was a teenager was doing. So I don't have the connection like I had with those albums.
Yeah.
But there's moments that I like. I appreciate how influential it was.
Sure.
But there's a few comments that I kind of agree with. But I do think it's a very influential record. But that doesn't make it the best record.
No.
Just because it's the most known or the most influential, it doesn't make it the best record, which is what we're kind of debating here.
Yeah.
And the best record is, take your pick, dudes and dudettes. Like, this is it. Now, I mean, if you want to throw down, the best record. I mean,
I'm not gonna get to say a word on Roots, am I?
sorry, man.
It's all right. No, it's not your fault. It's Cowbell over here. Yes. What would you like?
I'm not. This is the Cowbell. My name is still
I'm
Lisa.
blaming it on the Cowbell.
Belthery, do you like that?
How's that?
I like Belthery. That's my favorite. Cowbell from Hell is also pretty good. No, we often talk when we do the subgenre debates for the metal tree that a key thing is not how much you like them, but how influential they are.
Yeah.
So when you take that as a consideration,
Okay, then I
it's
take
certainly
back
the
everything.
most influential record.
It's by far the most influential Sepultura record. There's absolutely no debating that.
It's just whether you like how that turned out.
Roots is not a Sepultura album that I like. Full stop. I will argue that I think it's a bit harsh to suggest that this was a band that was pandering to a sound that was popular, even though we could get in the weeds about which groove-oriented metal albums were coming out before which ones. I think it was a pretty bold move. I don't see it as a pandering move. I see it as a shift in the band's sound. That much I will say. Highlight on the record is Mike Patton appears, one of my all-time favorites, but in terms of metal, I had moved on to Scandinavia because it was Scandinavia that picked up the thread with what these albums did, and albums like Slaughter of the Soul were picking up, I think, where these albums left off. Should we move on, Lisa?
No, because
What?
we're not done.
Who's not done?
The chat is
Okay.
not done talking about Roots.
Who wants to talk? Horror Master. I've been listening to Sepultura since I was probably 12 years old when I heard Roots Bloody Roots, and it blew my mind. 8 years later, it still blows my mind. And with Sepultura being from a country that could be considered Hispanic or speaks Spanish, brings a smile. Well, yeah, it's Portuguese. But anyway, I got it. Good point. Tagafarinas Duene, pardon the pronunciation. Roots may have started the trend of ethnic metal. It may be all right for a few things like all varieties of folk metal, but there were limits to how much you could do it. Claes Isaacson says, Roots is a primal album. No dispute there. Straight from the heart, but it's not the same old Sepultura. It started a new era. And Raphael, Fireblade. Awesome. That's got to be a power metal stage name. Roots is Sepultura's best album, in my opinion, adding elements of thrash, groove, new, and death metal, as well as world and tribal music. Being the first band to have those influences is a masterpiece. I mean, that's
a masterpiece.
That's the point I'm trying to make. I don't think you can deny it for influence. I think it was a really bold musical move with the imagery, the instrumentation, the video.
And can I just say that we are comparing Roots to like these records that are like insanely amazing,
right?
If that's even
a phrase.
Yeah, they're so heavy, and so I mean, it's really different shades of the same color.
Well, while you have your hand down there massaging the magnet, I think you need to move it up.
Okay.
I think it does stick out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, now I'm feeling bad for agreeing with some of those harsher critics of Roots.
Are you happy with the magnet formation, Lisa Ladiseur?
Are
these three working for you?
In terms of reflecting what the chat thinks, yes.
Right? Do we need to move KSAD sort of into the fray here? I don't know. I don't know what this represents. Maybe Schizophrenia. Not a lot of shout outs for Schizophrenia.
Yeah, keep it on my side though. 'Cause it's
you can go home with it.
You can cuddle up with Schizophrenia over there. Okay. I think it represents something. We got a formation. Lisa, what's next? Where are we going?
So the recap, you want to just do a little recap of where we're at up until Roots?
Sure. Well, okay.
In terms of what people have said.
Yeah, so Danko and I came out of the gate. Beneath the Remains for both of us, our all-time favorite Sepultura record. A lot of people agreed, but a lot of people feel more strongly about Arise. We kind of agreed it's a more refined version of this, and there's a lot of kinship. It's almost like a double album, like a back-to-back thing going on. Chaos AD, definitely some love for that album, but I think there's a louder chorus screaming probably for Roots than Chaos AD, because we could argue that the sound they were developing here was fully realized here. Much like we said, the sound they were developing here was fully realized with Beneath the Remains. So, are we moving on to the second chapter of Sepultura?
Whether you like it or not, we have to, and I hope you will stick around in the chat for part 2 of our episode. Okay. Sepultura, The Current Years.
Okay, so many of you know Sepultura puts out Roots in '96. The following year, I believe, Max Cavalera splits from the band and goes on to form another band by the name of Soulfly. And Danko, you have a little interesting story around that, how that all happened. Yes, that involves a band from Phoenix, Sacred Reich?
Oh, well, I mean, I mentioned to you before we started rolling that I kind of, leading up to this, kind of touched base with Phil Rind from Sacred Reich. Yeah. And I kind of figured we were going to talk about the split, and that's a very kind of personal thing that involves best friends and brothers and families. Yeah. And I think he had the best answer, and he just, seeing that Sacred Reich was managed by the same Gloria who managed Sepultura, and you know, whatever happened, it was a tragedy that happened and that preceded all that, but then Max ended up choosing his family. He chose his family for his band, and Phil made the good point of they're still together to this day. So I think he made the right choice when he had to. I think he's actually come around and kind of regretted the impulsive decision he made, but you can't fault him for, you know, going with his heart and his family. And so I know that a lot of people are going to say what they say, but what ended up happening was the first Soulfly record and Against, and that's what was meant to happen. Yep. And for all the better, because we were given 2 bands now.
Yep. I don't think you can fault Max for making the decision that he did, and of course there's been more ink spilled on this particular storyline in metal than a lot.
But it involves families.
Yeah, I think it's a sensitive topic that goes even beyond music, no matter how much we care about music. So Lisa, where are we gonna go?
Well, we're gonna try and figure out if any of these albums, post Roots, belong on the top Sepultura albums of all time list. So to try and get people thinking critically about these records and not just comparing them to things from the past, we did a Twitter poll.
Okay.
We asked people of the Derek era albums, what's your favorite? And Dante came out on top.
Okay, well, let's see what people have to say. Dante 21, released in 2006, the last record with Igor Cavalera on drums. Stan Ribeiro says that Dante is a determined middle finger to the negative campaign against the band from the Max camp and a welcome stake of claim to being one of the best bands from Latin America. MADA says that Dante is such an underrated Sepultura album. It sounds like it would have been more of a successor to Arise than their other albums. And Vonsu is back saying, I dig Dante, but the band is a totally lower level since Against. Other thrash veterans like Testament, Creator, and Overkill beat the shit out of Sepultura in the last decade. And then we've got the Blue Banger. Dante is the most disappointing record. It starts off with Dark Wood of Error and Convicted in Life, two amazing songs that can rival the classics from the old days, but after that, it's a bad record. You know, Danko, like, there is a shift, maybe just stepping back a bit here, like there is a shift in the band's sound that happens with Against and onwards. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, first of all, I love the Derek Green era. I'm going to say it. It's a throwdown to everyone out there.
Right.
But I will partition it into two eras. That leads into the album that was released just last week that I think starts a third era, if I'm not wrong. So the first era would be these three records here. And yeah, I think with Against, I think Against was the best out of the three for me personally. They were really shooting out of the gate. They had something to prove. They were, again, hungry, and they had a lot to prove on many levels. Down to Andreas with just the guitar, new singer, who is not Brazilian, who represents, you know, North America now. So
and really in the metal world, no one had really heard of this guy.
No,
Derek Green.
he comes
if you were a hardcore fan, yes,
exactly. He comes from the hardcore
Steep
world.
mountain to climb.
And so this was very important, and I think they rose to the occasion. It's a great, solid album. Then, for me, in the entire discography, I would have to say these are my. I listened to them and they're great, and we actually toured with them on this record. But I agree with a lot of people that Dante is a great return to form. Sadly, Igor's last record with the band, but this ushered in a new era that I have to say starts with these four records of just non-stop, like, bludgeoning brutality records that I think a lot of people just don't give a chance to, who are in the Max camp. But yeah, man, Alex was incredible. I always forget about Kairos, but this is an amazing record as well. And then it ends with this and Mediator. But yeah, man, when Dante came out, that was on my top 10 of the year. So it was a definite amazing return to form.
Thank you. That was good for context. Yes, Lisa.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about Against.
Let's talk about Against. Here we go. Against 1998, of course, the first record with Derek Green, and the first, as Danko aptly mentioned, one guitar and a lot of songwriting responsibility now resting on Andreas' shoulders. Victor Volen, any album with Derek is better than Roots, okay? And the last three ones are musically on the same level as the classic ones. Just because there are no Max nor Igor, people put them down without hearing them. Nicky Goods, Against was such a bold step. Punk thrash, world music, percussion, just perfect. Alex Ojeda says, I first saw Sepultura with Derek at Tattoo the Earth in 2000. I think I was there, Detroit. Great show at the time. All I knew was Roots. I liked Against. I backtracked to the albums with Max and loved the intensity of those albums. For me, that intensity lacked in the post-Max lineup until I heard Convicted in Life. Nathan Henderson, Against was a great follow-up to Roots, especially with Derek coming in. I thought Sepultura would have lost the quality of Max's playing and songwriting, but this album is awesome. With the other albums after Against, I reckon they did lose that quality a bit, especially when Igor left. But other than that, Sepultura will always be one of the best the bands that got me into metal. Rob Naylor, Jason Newsted on Against was awesome. He should have fronted Sepultura. Oh, the what ifs of metal. That would be a good show. The what ifs of metal. Delicious Dishes. I want to physically burn all copies of Nation, Against, and Roarback. We do lock horns here from time to time.
But then he would miss Choke, which is apparently one of their most amazing songs.
Right, that's right. Second track
Absolutely.
on Against.
There's someone saying choke, choke, choke.
Yeah,
choke.
there you go. Heavy Metal Heretic, choke, choke, choke.
So the Twitter
yeah.
people really liked Dante, but the Lockhorns chat really likes Against.
There you go.
So.
Interesting. Yeah. Anything else to say on this era?
Yeah, one more thing about and going back to Andreas. And again, like Schizophrenia proved, Andreas, quiet, anchor, very important with Sepultura.
For sure, for sure.
So we're going to have to move one of those records up.
I think you're right. And which one? Is it Dante? Or is it Against?
What do you
or
think?
is it both? Uh-oh.
It could be both.
Maybe both. Okay, we got to do a big shuffle here, I think. It's time to do some housekeeping. Against is up there. I think clearly Nation and Roarback are down. Schizophrenia will keep over here, Danko, because...
It's like the Price is Right here.
Yeah.
What is happening?
Let's tighten this up. So here's the...
I think we should have a triangle. Number 1 at the top,
Yes.
and then 3, and then the rest, kind of.
Okay,
What do you
3
think?
and then the rest. So we're going to say something like...
Live TV, folks.
Like this? Are we saying that Sepultura, probably Dante? I don't know. It's not really a triangle, but it's something. I don't know if that makes any
Robot
sense.
Man.
Yeah, that's how I'm loosely characterizing.
Well, you would, because you like Beneath the Remains, so you're just conveniently leaving it on top of Arise. I think those are actually
Busted.
about equal in the comments, but we have to
What,
have
Beneath
a
the
winner.
Remains in Arise?
We have to have a winner,
Hey,
though.
hey.
So
But that's the heart of the robot.
Okay, different metaphor.
there we go.
Is it a pyramid or is it a robot? Anyway, we get the point. Yeah, possibly Arise needs to be up here. I don't know about that. Okay, some shape. We're going to talk about some other Derek era albums here,
We're
Lisa?
pretty much at the end of our time here on Lockhorns. Can you
What?
believe it?
I can't
We
believe
needed a
it.
2-part show, actually.
Okay, I'm going to clean this up even more because, you know.
Can I just state that Machine Messiah is amazing?
Of course. Let's talk about the new record before we...
Talk about the new record, Danko, while I knock things over.
All right, well, Machine Messiah just got released last week, and I've only had less than a week to listen to it. But right off the bat, I said that it might usher in the next era. The next era that I think is less of the interludes,
Yeah.
the pretty interludes, less of the world percussion.
Yeah.
They really trim the fat here.
Yeah.
And this is a pure heavy metal album.
Yeah.
Dare I say almost proggy.
Yeah.
That again showcases Andreas as like a consummate musician, master guitarist.
I will add, my review of the record will be coming up on Banger TV on Friday. You're totally on the mark with the proggy thing. There's a lot of thrash on this album, but there's some really kind of big, proggy kind of breathing moments on this record that I think is showing a whole other side of
Yeah.
Sepultura. I never imagined a song like Sworn Oath, which has this big kind of riff in the middle of it that has a string section behind it, and the first song is like 6 minutes long, and it's just sort of this slow, plodding, droning setup for I Am the Enemy, which is just going to rip your face off. So they've got some of the purest thrashy songs that I've heard in a long time. At the same time, these kind of big, more epic arrangements. It's
yeah,
an interesting turn. for
Yeah.
sure. Yes.
That was like... there
Come
we
on,
go.
hit the bell.
I know. I'm getting my bell groove. We do have a few comments on the last record before
Okay,
we go.
here we go. Machine Messiah, Rob Naylor. Can we talk about the last two? Definitely a renaissance, even though I like the Derek era, the addition of Eloy. Yeah, fucking
Right.
amazing drumming on
Yeah.
that record. I forgot to mention, Addition of Eloy has brought new life, and both Mediator and Machine are brilliant. Wessel Brokius says the new record, Machine Messiah, is really ambitious, good word. It shows a previously unexplored progressive side of Sepultura. Actually, I didn't know they had this in their DNA. Matthew Levens, excellent. Very different flamenco, strings and brass in places, but still heavy and groovy. New drummer is good too. He ain't so shabby.
Maybe
so,
we can all get along.
my argument, and then I'll shut up, I promise, is this feels like it might be the record before another truly great Sepultura record. It's almost like the Schizophrenia to Beneath the Remains or the Chaos AD to Roots. It feels like it's the setup. They're going somewhere.
Yeah, that's why I feel it's the beginning of a new era.
They haven't really found it yet, but where they're going is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. And did anyone find the Lita Ford? Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. We need to resolve that.
Oh, there's no resolving it. It is. It's a tribute. It's a tribute to Lita Ford.
It's a truth.
It ain't no big thing. Right?
No big thing. Lisa, are we done? Is it comment of the week?
You know, there was a comment that went by so fast I couldn't grab it, which was like, you can't say blank is like Rain and Blood because we have Rain and Blood.
Right, good point.
So I liked that comment.
I think the comment
but
of
it
the
wasn't
week,
Sepultura related.
the comment of the week was
the guy that went on and
the fucking
on.
gigantic rant against Roots is up for comment of the year, which we should institute as a competition.
Jonathan Davis crying, need I say more?
No heavy breathing on the mic in metal. Danko Jones, thanks,
Sam,
buddy.
thank
that
you
was
very
awesome.
much. That was
thank
a lot
you
of fun.
for doing this with me. Thank you, Lisa, Daniel, Craig, and Andrew for making it happen. Big reminder, or not even a reminder, announcement. We have a brand new website, bangertv.com. All metal, always. You don't just have to go to the YouTube channel anymore. Go to the website. We're back next week with post-metal. I'm going to find out what that really means. John Semley, the eminent John Semley, has been on the show before. We'll be back. That's Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to Banger TV. Thank you for joining us. Hail Sepultura. Goodbye for now.